welcome to Positive Properties Real Stream. I'm here tonight with Australian Conveyancing. So we've got Henry Davis and Matthew. I've forgotten your surname.
Kelly.
Matthew Kelly. Welcome this evening. Thank you. I know you've been thrown in the deep end, but we do appreciate your time. So a little bit of background about Australian Conveyancing. So we've recently partnered up Positive Property and Australian Conveyancing so that we can give you basically a one-stop shop of professionals to help you through your property journey, I suppose. So your investment journey. So let's let the gentlemen give you an update of who they are and what they do. So who wants to start first, Henry or Matt?
I'll go first.
All right, Henry, floor's yours.
So I'm the principal of Australian Conveyancing. But I do a lot of other things as well. So my name's Henry Lloyd Davis. I'm based in Adelaide, and I actually started off in the Air Force. I used to hunt submarines and spy on China on the IPC-3 Orion. So turns out, though, I get airsick. So that was not the chosen profession for me. And I then transferred over to doing law, mainly because I really wanted to go to Hogwarts. And you speak some Latin and all of this thing, all of a sudden stuff happens. So I became a lawyer, and I specialize in the most interesting area of the law, which is taxation, which everyone knows and loves. And from that, I had a lot of conveyancing clients who also wanted to go with somebody they trusted and also understood a lot of the background of these structures and things like that. So I decided to start my own company in terms of specializing in conveyancing. Called Australian Conveyancing. I'm also on the Adelaide City Council. I'm looking at constructing Adelaide's first skyscraper, which is a 183-metre tall building on North Terrace. And I've been running that project as the chairman for the last 3 years. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I also am building chicken boxes on the weekends because I'm hoping to get chicken. So that's basically me in a nutshell.
Okay, chicken. So you're going to have a full-time stream of eggs coming in.
Very expensive these days. They're like $7.
Yes. Okay, that's a good money saver. Yeah, everyone, you need to start building chicken coops in your backyard. Matthew.
Hi, my name's Matthew Kelly. So I've been a conveyancer for all of my career, straight out of high school. I've worked in a number of different offices, from law firms to conveyancing firms. The majority of my time spent in legal practices. And in 2016, me and a couple of others in South Australia were the first employees of PEXA, which is the digital settlement platform that all conveyancers now use to settle their properties across Australia. So I was tasked with rolling electronic conveyancing out across SA and supporting the change from paper to 100% digital. And that finished up about 12 months ago, where I've gone back on the tools, I guess you could say, back into conveyancing again in a hands-on capacity. And happy to be here supporting Henry with Australian Conveyancing.
Yeah, I think we've got a really good team on board, and particularly the experience that we have in Matt and Dan they're excellent. People to be involved in Australian Conveyancing to make sure everything goes smoothly. And I also know that they might secretly have a bat phone just in case something goes wrong. So it's always good to have on board.
Very good. So what makes you different to other conveyancers? Why did we choose to go with you?
Yeah, so conveyancing used to be done by lawyers. I suppose it was actually predominantly a paper-based system. So, you might have heard the saying to stake a claim. So back in the day, people used to have 4 stakes. They would shove them in the ground, and whatever was in the middle of that was your land. And that's called the stake a claim. And you basically take control of it and squat on it. And so until Robert Torrens, I think it was Robert Torrens, in South Australia, very early I suppose late in the 18th century, he created this idea of having a centralized register where everyone would record what property they owned. Progress a couple of hundred years, and then Matt Kelly comes along and invents a digital system of doing that with verifications and keys and dongles and all this stuff.
Don't necessarily take the credit for inventing it.
Oh, sorry, I keep giving you full credit for
Take it.
you know, a multi-billion-dollar piece of software, but no, it was
Yeah,
basically
just all me. Yeah.
all him. All right. He puts a disclaimer out every single time afterwards. But basically, what happened was that it used to be lawyers who had conduct of these conveyances, and then it moved away where conveyancers you would go to and get a separate qualification, separate from a law degree, and you could start your own conveyancing company after completing that training. So the other thing is that normally conveyancers only operate in a single state. So there's two things there that Australian Conveyancing is aiming to do differently. Is one, Australian Conveyancing is looking to be able to take your files all over Australia and have continuity with you all over and manage your investments all over Australia. And I know that George, for example, with different tax strategies that he implements, and also he has a clock, I know about different times and he manages that very carefully. He might recommend that you have some properties in different states depending on where you are in that clock. And so it's really important, I think, to have a conveyancer that is across your file. I'm also a tax lawyer, so the structures that that you're actually putting these properties in for asset protection, I actually know I'm very familiar with what those structures are. And so by having someone who has a continuity over your file can actually lead to more efficiencies and also preventing mistakes in terms of it going into the wrong entity, because some of these structures, the more they get complicated, the more things can get mixed up. The second side of that is I'm actually a practicing solicitor, and most conveyancers aren't solicitors. So I'll have overview of your file. Matt and Dan do a lot of the heavy lifting in the firm, but I'll also have overview of what's going on in your particular file. So if the questions arise or something happens, I'm very familiar with who you are, and you don't have to then go and get a large firm, I suppose, and then go and meet with their principal for $600 an hour and then do a proposal and a terms of engagement, all this type of stuff when something might be quite urgent. So by having a lawyer basically presiding over the conveyance, I should say, as you go along, if anything should go awry, then you'll have that support there immediately. So that's why Australia Conveyancing is different. One, we're looking to have a national coverage, and we're expanding our reach at the moment. And secondly, we have lawyers on staff.
So how secure is my contract going from state to state around? Like I'm sending a contract from Western Australia to you in South Australia.
Oh, that's a great thing about PEXA.
Yeah.
Matt, that's probably a great question for you.
So both with using PEXA and with our internal systems that we use for document management and communication in Australia Conveyancing, they have some of the highest security encryption levels that you can have in anywhere in the world. So we've implemented a number of different platforms that we use to communicate with both Positive Property, but also any mortgage brokers and other real estate agents and third parties who are involved in the transaction. So it's a way that we avoid using email by all costs, and we always communicate just in secure encrypted servers.
Yeah, and you got your dongle?
For PEXA, yeah. So the way that your matter would be digitally certified in PEXA, so land registry instruments, trust account debits, things like that, they all used to be signed with a pen. Obviously, these days, you can't use a pen on the internet. So a digital certificate is what's used instead. And this is what a digital certificate looks like. I've always got mine on my keys. It goes everywhere with me. So yeah, that's how you, it's how it's stored on USB. You plug that into the computer, and that's how we load our credentials into the system.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
what is the encryption standard?
We can definitely provide the encryption standard if anybody's looking for it. We have all of the encryption credentials of the platforms that we use, but they're quite lengthy and difficult to explain quickly.
Okay. So for first-time investors, and I know we'll have some people watching who this is run-of-the-mill, they've done this a couple of times, but then we have those who are really new and green, I suppose, is a good word. If there was one thing that you could tell them to look for in a contract, or one thing to take note of, what would it be?
From my perspective, it would be the key dates. So when you are signing a contract, get as much advice as you can beforehand about how long everything's going to take. So how long it's going to take to transfer your deposit. Your deposit might be held in a term deposit or somewhere that you need to, not just have call access to that money. So make sure that you can quickly pay the deposit by the due date. How long is the finance application going to take? How long does your finance broker need to prepare for your formal finance approval? Because that will be required under the contract. And then, of course, once the formal finance is granted or approved, then there's a number of other documents and paperwork that need to be prepared by the bank and signed by you. And there can be another long period of time after formal finance is approved before the bank will be in a position to settle. So just be aware of the key dates in the contract, the deposit payment, the finance due date, the settlement date, and whether or not there is sufficient time between those dates to have everything happen on time. Of course, if you get to a finance due date or a settlement date and you're not ready to go, you don't have those, don't have the finance ready, there can be penalties under that contract that the vendor may need to serve notice on you to say that you haven't complied with your side of the deal and things like that. So it's best avoided if we can possibly avoid it.
So dates are important.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Have your
that's
finance
really
done. Have your deposit transferred so that it's cleared by that set date, things like that.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about what George is putting together through his program, through Positive Property, is that he has that circle of safety. So with the mortgage brokers and George and us and the lawyers, we're all very familiar with who we are and how we work, and we can always communicate. So generally, we understand we always understand what each other's systems are, and so that guarantees, I suppose, a much smoother transition, where sometimes there can be a lot of miscommunication between when your structures need to be set up, or whether your mortgage broker's got finance, or when your conveyances all going through. And it really does need to go through seamlessly. Otherwise, you can end up being sued for non-settlement.
And nobody wants that. We like to keep our money.
Lawyers would love that. Yeah.
Lawyers would love that. Yes, yes.
Not me, though. I'm a conveyancer.
Now, Henry, we know that you're on part of the council. You do some work with them. I've got a curly question for you, and it's something that was put to me recently. So I'm just going to throw it out there and see what you come up with. So basically it was, what does the council look for when it's approving developments, and why does the council approve a development and then right at the time when the plans are being sealed and everything's being lodged, why do they go, we want you to change something and delay registration?
Yeah, well, council's going to make it too easy for you, right? So if your life was easy, you'd live a long time. It's not good for, I don't know. Yeah. Basically, look, the thing is that I can talk to South Australia because we've actually just gone through this new system where it used to be the case that every single council area had their own set of rules, I suppose, and their own criteria for what would get approved in their area depending on their regions. South Australia has just gone to a consolidated system. There's now 3,300 pages of this bloody Development Act. It's ridiculous, it's onerous, and incredibly complex. Now, from a council point of view, the new rules actually give them a very short window when they actually have to make these approvals and push them through. So there's still, just talking to South Australia, there's a lot of confusion about how that actually gets implemented, and there's also some very strict timelines. Normally what you would do is you'd submit it for, I suppose there's different types of development applications, whether they're complying or non-complying, and whether you have to go to the council assessment panel or whether the internal staff are willing to approve it. Now, that's another really important thing about the circle of safety, is having planners in your area that can understand that specific system. In South Australia, it used to be the case where you would be wanting to look for planners that focus in the area where you're seeking that approval, because every council is different. But now you're looking at a very, very complex document that everyone's trying to get their head around. So I think that's just part of your circle of safety, where you need to get the right planners on board to make sure that you're not held up at council, because if you don't have the planning approval and you can't settle and you don't really want to commit to it, you might, and you've got a building contract sitting there as well pressing on you. You really do want to make sure that everything's lined up before, and on time and on the budget, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, I think that just about wraps us up for our Facebook Live tonight. So thank you, gentlemen. I do appreciate your time. And for everyone else who is watching, we're going to jump on over to our SHRP. So you guys are more than welcome to come in and join us there. We can do more of a Q&A with the guys, and you can ask them anything you want.
We're getting into a bit more detail.
We can go in more detail, yes.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, we'll see you all then. Thank you ever so much. Have a good night. Cheers.